When you think of a scientific laboratory, you're probably not picturing this, a 200-year-old cottage with a thatched roof on the shore of the ocean. But this is a lab that I work in, and inside of it, a lot of awesome archaeological research is going on. This building is called the Monroe House, and is itself a historical building with a long history. Located on the grounds of the Diaz Museum on the coast of South Africa, it was first built in the 1830s. Over time, it served as a home base for harvesting seals from the bay and as a tavern to host passing sailors who stopped by the town of Mossel Bay, which at this time was only just beginning to be developed. Now, Mossel Bay is an iconic beachside town that is a popular holiday location for South Africans. The Monroe House has survived into this modern era and now serves as the home base for the Mossel Bay Archaeological Project and houses an archaeological laboratory visited by researchers from across the world, like me. It's fitting that this old building, which has a long history of its own, is now being used by archaeologists to discover the ancient history of the region. The research conducted in this lab focuses on learning about the Stone Age of South Africa. The Stone Age is the first era of humanity. It represents over 99% of human history, stretching from over 3 million years ago till it ended around 4,000 years ago. During this period, short, ape-like ancestors evolved into the tall, big-brained, and upright walking species we are today. These ancestors used wood and stone to make all their tools, which is where the Stone Age gets its name. For most of the Stone Age, people survived by foraging for all their food, hunting wild animals, and gathering native plants. These people were the first artists, the first storytellers, and the first people to look up into the stars and wonder what it all means. Archaeologists like myself conduct excavations, which is where we carefully dig up all of the things they left behind, and we bring them back to this lab to study them. We find a lot of things in Stone Age excavations, including charcoal from ancient fire pits, pigments used in arts, beads used as decorations, and much, much more. But most of the things we find are stones and bones. These stones are their ancient tools. Some of the oldest stone tools we find in South Africa were made millions of years ago by a species called Homo erectus, who lived during a period archaeologists call the Early Stone Age. They made tools that look like this, which we call Acheulean hand axes, and we find them all over the old world wherever Homo erectus traveled. Although their name suggests they were used as axes, we don't actually know what they are used for, but their sharp edges suggest they might have been used as a cutting tool. These stone tools were made by taking a big chunk of rock called a core and carefully hitting flakes off the core with another rock called a hammerstone. They would remove flake after flake until they got their desired shape. We call this way of making stone tools foot napping, and people still do it today. Over 1 million years, Homo erectus slowly evolved into our species, Homo sapiens. The tools made by the earliest Homo sapiens are called lavawa flakes and look like this. They are the defining type of stone tool used during a period archaeologists call the Middle Stone Age, which is the period when our species evolved into modern humans. Middle Stone Age tools may have been used as spearheads and knives, and even the earliest arrowheads. In fact, the earliest evidence for bows and arrows are housed right here in this lab, and were excavated from a nearby archaeological site called Pinnacle Point, which happens to be the site that I'm currently working on. We can learn a lot about ancient humans and the course of our evolution from studying the stone tools they left behind. They tell us about the technological advancements and the evolution of our cognitive abilities, as well as the evolution of culture. Culture is the shared beliefs, customs, and behaviors that characterize a group of humans. Many anthropologists consider culture to be the defining characteristic of humans that separates us from all other species. These stone tools record the evolution of culture in our ancestors, and the variability and similarities of different groups. So those are the stone tools that we find at archaeological sites. The other main type of thing we find are fossil bones, often from non-human animals. And this is what I study. These animal fossils tell us about human ecology, including the types of environments that we lived in, the community of animals we lived around, and the types of foods we were eating. At archaeological sites near the coast, we also find a lot of shells collected by humans for food, and some even for decorations. Most of the fossils that archaeologists find are not the kinds you see displayed at museums. Those big, unbroken fossils are super rare, and most of what we find are little bits of broken bone. But even these little fossil fragments can tell us a lot about the past. During the analysis of the fossil, one of the main things that we record about each fossil is what part of the skeleton it came from and what species it came from. Some of these little tiny fossils are too broken up to determine which species it came from. But with enough practice, a skilled archaeologist can figure out what bone and what type of animal many of these fossils belong to. The equipment needed to study fossils is often quite simple. Calipers or a ruler for taking measurements, a toothbrush to lightly brush off dirt, and a microscope and a good light to see little details of the fossil. But one of the most important tools for fossil analysis is what we call a comparative collection. Comparative collections are collections of skeletons from modern animals. Comparative collections can fill a whole floor of big museums, or can fill a single closet, like we have here in our lab. Archaeologists use comparative collections to help us determine which species a fossil belongs to. I compare the fossil next to the comparative bones until I find a perfect match. The knowledge about culture from the stone tools and ecology from the fossils are each a piece of a big puzzle. Piece after piece, archaeologists put this puzzle together to reveal the picture of how these earliest humans lived.